this. Good morning. It's Monday, April the 12th, and this is The Drill. And this morning is the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare. I have given you power to release yourself from the curse of lust and perversion. My child, I have given you the gift of my Holy Spirit, who is powerful and strong and who will save you from the curse of lust and perversion that has affected the generations with whom you dwell. Trust my Holy Spirit to give you the power to release yourself from the spirits of lust and perversion. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Let perverse lips be far from you, and let your eyes look straight ahead. Ponder the path of your feet, and let all your ways be established. Do not turn to the right or the left, and keep your foot removed from evil. Prayer declaration. Holy Spirit, fill me with the power to set myself free from all lust and perversion. I will no longer live under the curse of a perverse heart, and I commit to you today to keep my lips free from the perversion and my eyes looking straight at you. Let all my ways be established in righteousness, and continue giving me the strength to remove my feet from all evil. Amen. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare. And it was from a book by John Eckhart. So coming up is going to be Ayn Rand, The Psychological Left, Welfare Reactionism, Stack the Court, and Nancy Pelosi's Fault. All that when I come back. The two main things that to take away from Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand, again, was I don't know if I've said it in the past, but I'll say it now, the first true conservative. Now, if she was alive today, she'd probably slap me or laugh or whatever, because she considered conservatism to be a waste of time. She was very contemptuous of conservatives and Republicans and republicanism. And then she went ahead and created her own philosophy, which is a contradiction in terms. And so she ended up she marginalized herself intellectually by creating objectivism. But anyways, the two things that you need to take away from Ayn Rand that is absolutely essential is, number one, listen to yourself. You know, people may ask you, so I should listen to you. So I should do things your way. No, you should listen to yourself and listen to your conscience. I call it the conscience. She referred to it as that little voice in your head that will tell you and bother you when you're reading something, listening to something, and that little voice in your head says, I don't know, something's not quite right here. Listen to that. Don't just blow it off. Don't just say, what do I know? I'm not a broadcaster. What do I know? I'm not a published author. What do I know? Don't do that. Listen to it, because most of the time there's a damn good reason why your conscience is setting off an alarm, and you take the time to figure out what it is that's bothering you. You don't have to be obsessed with it, sitting down and doing nothing else until you figure it out. The way I do it is that if something bothers me, I try to figure out what it is immediately, and after a certain period of time, I'll just simply put the issue aside and come back to it later, because after all, I've got other things I have to do, feed myself, etc. So, number one is listen to your own voice. Number two, you've got to understand the concept of essences. This is one of the reasons why you want to have a basic understanding of philosophy and things philosophical, metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, aesthetics, etc. So you want to, and metaphysics is about essences. What is it that makes one thing what it is and not something else? And you may think, well, who cares? It's just an academic exercise. No, it isn't. It's a foundation that is going to serve you later on. When somebody comes and calls you a Nazi, at least for the sake of your own sanity, how do you know that they're right or wrong? The only way you can figure it out is by understanding and knowing essences. What is the essence of being a Nazi? What is the essence of being a conservative, of being on the political right? Because the left wants to say, well, Nazism is on the far, extreme right. No, it's not. And we know for sure that that's the case because we understand what the essences are of being on the left, what the essence of being on the right means, and what the essence of being a Nazi means. So when you understand what essences are and are able to have insight, penetrating insight, and be able to determine what the essences are of any given thing, you're unstoppable. You are literally unstoppable. Nobody on the left can defeat you, period. That's all there is to it. So those are the two things that you need to, again, if you're going to take away from Ayn Rand, and that's one good reason to study Ayn Rand, get her nonfiction work. Don't bother with the Fountainhead and the other book, whatever she had. Don't even bother with that. That's a waste of time. Get to the nonfiction works, Philosophy, Who Needs It for the New Intellectual, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, the Romantic Manifesto, etc. Get to those books, read those, and read them again and again and again. Don't just read them, study them. And you'll find out what it means to be a true conservative. It's occurred to me that, thank you by the way, but it's occurred to me that I'm not communicating enough about I always refer to it as depth, but really what it is psychological warfare on the part of the left. The left is operating at a depth, deep, and I mean psychological. They're playing psychological games with you. When they refer to the homeless instead of bums, they're playing psychological games. When they refer to the dreamers instead of illegal aliens, they are playing psychological games with you, and that's where we're going to win and lose the fight is psychologically. If you allow them to dominate the playing field and it becomes their vocabulary, the left's vocabulary that dominates, we can't win. The greater degree to which we stop their vocabulary. If the left wants to use their own language to describe things, and that's the way they talk amongst themselves, I can't stop that, and I wouldn't even try. But true conservatives should speak and communicate to each other, at least, and, as a matter of fact, to the left, in truly conservative ways. And we do that, bum, for instance. We use the word bum, we use the words illegal aliens to describe what's going on. Drug cartels are also involved with illegal aliens, etc. But it's a psychological process. They're trying to get in your psyche. And I know this because I read an editorial, wish I still had it, right after the Justice Thomas hearings in which he was nominated, and it was a really nasty affair. As a matter of fact, it was old Joe who was running the committee, whatever committee it is in the Senate, that was confirming him, setting up to confirm him. But it was a really nasty affair. And after he went ahead and was confirmed, then the left, in one of their magazines, it was Mother Jones or whatever, Mr. Jones, or whatever the hell it was, some stupid ratty-ass magazine, in which the editorialist said that the way that the left is playing the game is a loser, that all it does is invite a backlash. So when you're out there savaging people like whatever candidate that the right puts up for the Supreme Court, you're just inviting, again, a backlash. And the best way to do things is to get in the right's psyche. Okay, and that's what they've been doing. And that's the hallmark of post-Marxism. That's the difference between post-Marxism and regular Marxism. Regular Marxism is direct action. You form some kind of a revolutionary cell, and you get weapons of various sorts, and you start mounting direct action campaigns. You go out and blow things up. You go out and shoot people, assassinate. There were those types of Marxist organizations in the 60s, the Weathermen and others, that would throw bombs around and assassinate police officers, etc. So all of those people, by the way, eventually became the people they were protesting. All those people became the people they hated. Anna Dean Dorn and Bill Ayers became upper middle class brats in Chicago, living across the street from a U.S. Senator named Barack Obama. They became the very people they complained about, the very people that they hated, the very people that they destroyed. And so did all the radicals of the 60s. They were absorbed by society. Jerry Rubin wrote a book called Steal This Book, and it was about being a radical, how to live on the road, so to speak. And he ended up wearing a three-piece suit, cutting his hair, shaving his beard, and putting on a three-piece suit and being a businessman. But anyway, so those are the Marxists, the direct action people, the ones that want to take indirect action to get in your psyche, to get you to want, or at least think you want, or at least pretend to want socialism, are those people that are post-Marxist in nature. But is the place where the fight is happening is psychologically deep. If you're listening to Sean Hannity, you're listening to Hugh Hewitt, you're listening to people like that, all you're going to get is the shallow political analysis, the shallow political answers to shallow political questions. And that's one of the reasons why we on the right keep losing. And why it is that not only do we have 12 states that have legalized the recreational use of marijuana, but we have the state of California that's getting ready to put on the ballot the decriminalization of cocaine, heroin, and psilocybin. So we got to pay attention to the psychological angles. When they're doing something on the left and you scratch your head and think, what's that all about? You can bet your sweet bippy that it's something psychological. They're trying to get to your psychology and render you basically defenseless. Because how do you fight the homeless? How do you fight the dreamers? You can't, you won't, you don't. And that's the point. Again, going back to the difference between being a true conservative and being a reactionary traditionalist. The reactionary traditionalist hates general relief, welfare, what's known as colloquial, whatever, known as welfare, or hates Section 8 and those kinds of government programs. And they make a big deal out of how it's about welfare queens and how people are jobbing the system, etc., and that it's full of fraud. And it has its moments where it is full of fraud. But that can be cleaned up. But the right, the true conservative thinks about it. For instance, I've been on general relief, and general relief when I was on it was $235 a month. $235 a month. And so why would you as somebody on the right, a conservative or even a reactionary, get upset over $235 a month, $90 a month in food stamps? That's $3 a day. It's nothing. It's pathetic. The money, most of the welfare money is not going to the recipients. It's going to the unions. That's where the money is going. But anyways, and that's what if you're conservative and you're going to object to these programs, you need to object to them on that basis. but objecting to them because it's somehow letting the individual off the hook for being responsible for providing for themselves is just hogwash. It's just absolute crap. And then you have all the horror stories about Section 8, and I'm sure that there are those bad situations that have happened, but by and large, it's a stable program. It's a good program. It has its checks and balances, if you will. There's rules to it. There's things you can do. There's things you can't do. And it's a viable, workable program. And if it helps somebody to get off the street and become independent, so much the better from the thinking man's perspective, instead of just being a reactionary traditionalist. You have to think your way through these issues instead of just simply psychologically reacting to them. I had said before that one needs to be not to panic when you hear the left making these bold threats. Nothing is off the table. That was what Chuck Schumer said, and I mentioned and observed that they have a lot of promises or a lot of things on their wish list, because, of course, no politicians actually make promises anymore, and in part because we don't ask them to. But Uncle Joe, Old Joe, Joe Mama, whatever, the thief in chief, has now decided he's going to have a commission study the idea of expanding the Supreme Court. He's getting cold feet. Instead of going ahead and moving ahead with trying to get statehood for Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., he is going to stall. He's going to put it off. He's got a bit of cold feet. And this is typical of the left. They love to bluff, because what they really want to happen is they make a bluff and then hope that their opponents will overreact. And then that's the way they make, quote-unquote, progress. They use that overreaction for the basis for more threats, more idle threats, more condemnation, judgment, and then they get their opponents to go ahead and make concessions. And that's the way they kind of operate. In this particular case, nobody's making concessions, so it's on Old Joe, dumbass Joe, to go ahead and get the ball rolling. Well, he doesn't have the guts. Apparently nobody in his administration has the guts, because I don't think he's actually running his own administration. I think it's running him, and he's just a figurehead. So nobody in his administration has the actual guts to get the ball rolling and start getting Puerto Rico going and asking Puerto Rico to do a referendum and on statehood, and get Washington, D.C. to do some sort of a initiative or a referendum on statehood. Instead, they're going to stall and do some sort of a commission. Now, this also comes down to the point, again, what I was saying a few seconds ago about promises. They were trying to get him, nail him down. The press was, to a certain degree, but mainly people on the right were trying to get him to state his position on, quote-unquote, stacking the court. And in other words, to make a promise one way or the other. Either promise to stack the court or promise to refuse to stack the court. But the motto that runs politics today is under promise, over deliver. And the logical extension of that is promise nothing, claim credit for everything. So what we can do, you and I, as rank and file individuals, taxpayers, and voters, is hold people accountable. First of all, everybody in your life, you should be asking to make promises. Do you promise? Do you promise? And you should be making promises. I promise I will do. I promise I will stop doing, whatever. And then asking that the same thing of your politicians. When you get the opportunity, if somebody's running for office, and it's going to be happening next January, they're going to start running in earnest, especially Republicans, put them on the spot. What do you promise to do? What is your list of promises that you will deliver to your constituents? Put them on the spot. Don't let them get away with this making vague general statements, rah-rah cheerleader statements. I hate the Democrats. I hate socialism. Rah-rah. That's crap. What specifically do you promise? And then hold them to it. And again, that was standard when you were running for office. When I was growing up, people would make promises. I promised to lower crime X amount of percent or whatever. So anyways, with good old Joe, he and his handlers were skillful at making sure that he made no promises one way or another. So if it comes about, he will claim credit. If it doesn't, he doesn't have to worry about being blamed for anything. He can honestly say, hey, I didn't promise you a stacked Supreme Court. But again, this is the Democrats. They talk ferociously. Ooh, their bark. There's a saying that the bark is worse than its bite, and that's the way the Democrats are. Very, very, very big, ferocious bark, and when it comes to bite, they're toothless. Again, they want their hands to be clean. They want to be able to go to a cocktail party and say, don't look at me. The Republicans are destroying themselves. Gee, what a shame. That's what they want to be able to do. And if they go out and they start stacking the court, they can't do that. Then they're going to have to put on gloves, grab a hammer, and get to it, and they don't want to do that. They like to pretend that they're the leaders, the change agents, the people at the chalkboard drawing out all the plans and whatnot, the architects. But ask them to actually swing a hammer? No, not the Democrats. So again, here it's being set up for old Joe, make it look like he's doing something, when as a matter of fact, he's doing absolutely nothing. I was listening to Hyperlocal Sunday with Brian Suits, and he starts going into some details about there was a killing yesterday, and it was 3 small children that were murdered, and apparently murdered by their mom. And it was happening in Reseda, and the mother fled and got up to as far as Yosemite, and then was arrested on Yosemite after she actually went to Bakersfield and then carjacked somebody and took their car and went to as far as Yosemite. Now, at first, I was thinking that because normally any type of killings, mass killings that happen, I'm placing right at the feet of Nancy Pelosi. She's the head of the Democrat Party. They're beholden to the hardcore left, the anarchists, etc. And so they represent, whether they like it or not, they represent all the violence that goes on in our society because they're out promoting revolution. They're out promoting violence. They promoted it in Portland. They promoted it in Seattle, Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. And so they promote violence, and so they have to be held accountable. Now, I was going to say with this particular situation, I was going to say not so, that Nancy Pelosi would escape responsibility for this, but no. Indirectly, she has a responsibility because this has to do also with feminism. And feminism, it contributed, so-called, to our society by coming up with the pill and abortion, by putting women in the workplace, and by giving women no-fault divorces so they could get divorced anytime they want to. And so we end up with really is a culture of promiscuity, of selfishness, pettiness. And so this was because again, what was happening with this woman was she was in a custody battle, getting a divorce and involved in a custody battle for her children. So Nancy Pelosi does get to bear the responsibility of this because it is feminism that went ahead and created a culture of promiscuity. It's also an activistic, the cult of activism, where you act first and think later. So you end up having shotgun weddings, and then within 10 years, you're having a shotgun divorce. In some cases, literally. And so this woman goes ahead and murders her 3 children again in her no-fault divorce, and Nancy Pelosi gets to have a piece of that. If she hadn't created this kind of a culture, a culture of promiscuity and a culture in which of activism, in which you go ahead and act first, think later, hop into bed, and then deal with the consequences down the line, a culture of promiscuity, we would have less of these kinds of deaths and less of these kinds of horror stories. Basically, that's what it is. It's a horror story. And it goes to Nancy Pelosi for it. It's not, and the woman didn't shoot the children, she stabbed them. So, which, I don't know, maybe that makes Nancy feel better. As long as it's not a gun, I guess she doesn't care. And again, as long as it's a woman that's doing the killing, I guess it's okay. I don't know if she was white or Hispanic or what her race was, but I suppose if she was a non-white female, then that makes it even better. So, but Nancy Pelosi gets it. There's authority and responsibility are commensurate. You assume the authority to change the culture. You must accept responsibility for not just the good things that you perceive in that culture, if there are any, but you also have to accept responsibility for the negatives, for the downsides. And there's a boatload of downside to feminism. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. We've covered Ayn Rand, the psychological left, welfare reactionism, stacking the court, and Nancy Pelosi takes the blame. So until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.